They call it the fiat. A simple word, a single syllable, yet within it, a universe fractured and reformed. My yes. A surrender, they say. An act of unparalleled faith. And it was, in a way, at first, a young girl, barely a woman, standing before an impossible light. A voice like the whisper of eternity in her ears, the weight of generations, of prophecies, of the very breath of God settling upon her shoulders. And she said, yes. What else could she say? The choice was an illusion, wasn't it? A courtesy extended by the Most High, knowing the answer already. My life, from that moment, became a tapestry, woven not by my hands, but by something vast and ancient. Each thread, they told me, was divine, each color a brushstroke of grace. I saw myself humble, yet strong, a willing participant in the grand design, the blessed among women, the vessel. That was the myth I lived, the one I breathed, the one I presented to the world and to myself. A shield against the whispers of a different, more primal truth. My sacrifice, they whisper, was to give him to the world, a profound, selfless act. And it was, of course, to carry him, to nurture
him, to watch him grow, knowing he was not truly mine, not in the way other mothers held their sons, their futures intertwined with a simple earthly love. My sacrifice began the moment the light faded, and the silence of the ordinary world returned, heavy with the weight of the extraordinary. I learned to live with the knowledge, with the crushing certainty of what lay ahead. It was not a sudden revelation, a single blinding flash of future horror. No, it was a slow, persistent drip, drip, drip of understanding. A fragment here, a phrase there. Old Simeon's words, sharp as blades. A sword will pierce your own soul too. And I smiled, a small, knowing smile, because I was the handmaid. I was ready. I was strong. That was the story. That was the bronze mask I forged for myself and for all to see. The mother who understood, the mother who accepted, the mother who gave. My sin, if it can be called such a thing, was the war. The silent, ceaseless war waged within the confines of my own heart. A battlefield where the divine will, the grand cosmic plan, clashed with the most fundamental, unyielding instinct known to any living creature, to protect my young.
Shield my child from harm, from pain, from the very notion of suffering. This was the true sacrifice, Father. Not the yes to the angel, but the daily, hourly, second by second no to my own nature. The constant suppression of a cry that wanted to tear through my throat, to rip the threads of that divine tapestry and weave a different one, a simple, ordinary one. One where he lived, where he was safe, where he was just mine.
What did he taste like?
Taste? What did he taste like? He was a child. He tasted of milk, of the warmth of my breast, of the dust of Nazareth when he would come in from playing, his small face smudged, his lips dry. He tasted of the simple bread we broke at supper, of the sweetness of dates, of the tartness of wild berries he'd find in the fields. He tasted of life, Father, of innocent, pure life. No, you misunderstand. You ask about taste as if seeking some profound spiritual essence, but he was flesh. He was blood. He was real. And in that reality lay the true torment. He was not a distant prophecy, a theological construct. He was a boy who scraped
Knees on the rocky paths outside our home. A boy who cried when he fell. A boy who, in my arms, felt every bit as vulnerable, as fragile as any other child born of woman. And when he fell, a tremor would run through me, a jolt so visceral, so immediate, that my hands would clench, my breath would catch, the instinct, raw and unbidden, to reach out, to catch him before he hit the ground, to cradle this small, bruised limb, to kiss away the pain. This was the first battlefield, Father. The small, everyday falls, the little cuts, the fevers that burned too hot. Each time, a whisper, a gentle reminder, a chilling echo of Simeon's prophecy. He must fall. He must suffer. And I would force my hands to remain still, force my muscles to relax, force my heart to accept what my body screamed against. It was a performance, you see, from the very beginning. A performance of acceptance, of understanding, of a mother who somehow transcended the ordinary bonds of love for a higher purpose. I would tell myself, he is not yours alone. He is for the world. His path is not yours to alter. I would recite the scriptures, the promises. I would knees on the rocky paths outside our home. A boy who cried when he fell. A boy who, in my arms, felt every bit as vulnerable, as fragile as any other child born of woman. And when he fell, a tremor would run through me, a jolt so visceral, so immediate, that my hands would clench, my breath would catch, the instinct, raw and unbidden, to reach out, to catch him before he hit the ground, to cradle this small, bruised limb, to kiss away the pain. This was the first battlefield, Father. The small, everyday falls, the little cuts, the fevers that burned too hot. Each time, a whisper, a gentle reminder, a chilling echo of Simeon's prophecy. He must fall. He must suffer. And I would force my hands to remain still, force my muscles to relax, force my heart to accept what my body screamed against. It was a performance, you see, from the very beginning. A performance of acceptance, of understanding, of a mother who somehow transcended the ordinary bonds of love for a higher purpose. I would tell myself, he is not yours alone. He is for the world. His path is not yours to alter. I would recite the scriptures, the promises.
A fate I accepted with my mind, but never, not truly, with my heart. My rationalization was always faith, always the divine plan. How could I, a mere mortal, stand against the will of the Almighty? How could I, who had been chosen, dare to question the very purpose of his coming? It was a sophisticated edifice of spiritual logic. I built it brick by painful brick around my heart, around that screaming instinct. His suffering is for salvation. His pain is for redemption. To intervene would be to deny all of humanity its hope. I would repeat these truths, these undeniable dogmas, until they felt like my own conviction. They were true, yes, objectively true. But they were also a a cage for the lioness within me, roaring to protect her cub. I convinced myself that my acceptance was the highest form of love, a love so pure, so selfless, that it transcended the earthly, messy, desperate love of a mother. I was Mary, the mother who understood God's will, not Mary, the mother who wanted to pull her son from the clutches of destiny.
Did you ever pray for it to be different?
How could I pray for it to be different?
To pray for difference would be to pray against the very fabric of existence, against the very reason for his being. It would be to wish away the salvation of souls, to deny the prophecy, to betray the trust placed in me. No, Father, I prayed for strength, for courage, for the grace to endure. I prayed for his strength, for his courage. I prayed that he would fulfill his purpose. That was my prayer, always. That was the prayer of the handmaid. The very idea of praying for a different path, it implies a resistance, a questioning of the divine wisdom. And I was taught from my earliest days to embrace the will of God, to find peace in his design. My mother, Anne, she spoke of it often, of the perfect order, the wisdom in all things, even those that seemed harsh or incomprehensible to our limited understanding. So, when the angel came, my yes was not just a response to a divine messenger. It was the culmination of a lifetime of training, of devotion, of a profound desire to serve. It was the logical, spiritual, and inevitable outcome. But the labyrinth of memory, Father, is a treacherous place. It is not a straight path, but a winding one with
hidden alcoves and echoes that distort the light. There was a time during his ministry when the crowds pressed in, when the Pharisees snarled, when the burden of his mission seemed to weigh him down, even physically. He would come home, his eyes weary, his body tired, and he would simply sit, and I would watch him. And in those moments, the logical framework I had built, the spiritual edifice, would tremble. I remember one evening, after a long day of teaching by the lake, he came back, his tunic stained with dust, his voice hoarse. He sat by the hearth, not speaking, just staring into the embers. And I, quietly, brought him water and a piece of bread. He took them, without looking up, and ate slowly. And in that quiet, in the simple act of a mother bringing sustenance to her weary son, a desperate, silent plea formed in my heart. Not a prayer, not with words, but a raw, unarticulated yearning. Let him rest, just for a moment. Let him be safe. Let this burden be lifted even for a single night. It was a yearning for the ordinary, for the simple, comforting rhythm of life, where sons just needed their mother's care and not the weight of the world. I would tell myself it was merely maternal concern, a natural human response. But beneath that, there was a deeper current, a current of longing for an alternate reality, a life where he was a carpenter, like Joseph, where he married, perhaps, and had children of his own, where his days were filled with the scent of wood and the laughter of a family, not the stench of the crowd and the whispers of betrayal. It was a fleeting thought, a shadow across the sun, immediately banished, because to entertain it was to deny everything, to deny the tapestry, to deny the divine threads. And so I would push it down, deeper and deeper, bury it beneath layers of scripture, of prophecy, of the profound acceptance I had cultivated.
The silence that followed these internal rebellions was always the heaviest. It was not the peaceful silence of contemplation, but the suffocating silence of suppression. The sound of a heart beating against a wall, trying to break through, only to be forced back again and again by the iron will of duty. And I would return to my tasks, to the mending of tunics, to the grinding of grain, to the quiet rhythm of a mother's life.
If nothing had happened, as if the war within had not just raged and been put down brutally by my own hand. The symbol, Father, the tapestry, it was supposed to be beautiful, a testament to God's plan, to my faith. But as the years wore on, as the threads tightened, it began to feel less like a divine artwork and more like a shroud. Each thread, a memory of his childhood, a moment of his suffering I had been forewarned about, a prophecy I knew he must fulfill. Each thread, once a symbol of my chosen path, became a binding, a constraint, a reminder of the inevitable. And I, the weaver, was also the one being woven into it, trapped within its design. I recall another instance. He was a young man then, perhaps 20. He had just returned from a journey, and his feet were sore from walking. I was washing them, a simple act of service, and as I held his foot in my hands, I felt the rough calluses, the small scars from thorns and stones, and then a shudder went through me, a premonition clear as day. I saw nails, large, brutal nails piercing flesh, and the blood, so much blood. My hands instinctively recoiled. A gasp caught in my throat. He looked up, his eyes gentle, questioning, and I forced a smile, a watery, fragile thing. "Just tired, my son," I whispered, and I continued to wash his feet, but my hands were shaking, and the water in the basin seemed to turn red before my eyes. This was the torment, Father, not just the final act, but the endless rehearsals, the constant chilling premonitions that turned every moment of his life into a countdown. Every scraped knee, every weary sigh, every small cut, a grim foreshadowing. How could a mother live like that? How could she breathe, knowing what was coming and being utterly powerless to stop it? The rationalization became more elaborate, more intricate. I convinced myself that this foreknowledge was a gift, a way to prepare, a way to be strong for him, to be the rock he needed. I even began to believe that my constant internal struggle, my suppression of the maternal instinct, was a form of spiritual purification, that by denying my own desires, I was somehow participating more fully in his divine mission. It was a beautiful lie, a comforting delusion, and I clung to it with the desperation of a drowning woman. I told myself that my love was not just human, but divine, a love that transcended earthly pain, a love that could witness the unspeakable and remain steadfast. But beneath it all, the lioness still roared, muffled, contained, but never, ever silenced.
What did you hear at the foot of the cross?
Here, I heard the crowd, a cacophony of hatred, of mockery, of the cruel, indifferent laughter of soldiers. I heard the rasping of his breath, the agonizing sounds of his struggle. I heard the weeping of the women, the quiet sobs of John. But what I truly heard, Father, was the silence. The terrifying, deafening silence within my own soul. the silence of a scream that could not escape, the silence of a desperate primal plea that was forbidden. The world saw the Queen of Heaven, the pious, accepting mother, the one who bore it all with grace and dignity. And I played the part. I stood. I did not collapse. I did not tear my hair. I did not curse the heavens. My face, I imagine, was a mask of sorrow, yes, but also of profound understanding. A mother who knew, who accepted, who offered her son for the salvation of all. That was the tapestry they saw.
Was the myth I had woven for them and for myself. But beneath the surface, beneath the serene facade, there was only one thing. A mother. A mere, broken, human mother. And her heart, Father, was not accepting. It was screaming. Not in words, but in a raw, visceral agony that threatened to rip me apart from the inside. Take him down. That was the silent shriek. Take him down. Let me hold him. Let me comfort him. Let me tear those nails from his hands. Let me end this. My hands, which had been forced to be still when he stumbled as a child, now burned with an unbearable urge to act, to reach up, to pull, to fight, to do anything, to stop the suffering of my son. The divine plan, the prophecies, the salvation of humanity, all of it, in that moment, meant nothing, less than nothing. All that mattered was the unbearable, suffocating pain of watching my child die and being powerless, utterly, terribly, agonizingly powerless. I remembered the smell of his hair as a baby, the softness of his skin, the sound of his laughter echoing through our small home, and the feel of his tiny hand in mine, so trusting, so small.
I wanted, more than anything, to trade it all the glory, all the blessings, all the future salvation, to trade it for a single moment, a single chance to pull him from that cross and bring him home, to mend his wounds, to make him tea, to tell him a story and just have him safe. The tapestry, Father, it unraveled in that moment. The beautiful, divine threads became cords of agony, tightening around my chest until I could barely breathe. The symbol of my acceptance, of my role in the divine plan, became the very instrument of my torture. Each thread, once a path to salvation, now a thread of blood, a thread of pain, binding me to the unspeakable. What seemed to be a glorious participation in God's will revealed itself to be a prison of foreknowledge and suppressed primal instinct. The beautiful weaving was a web, and I was caught. The nails, I could see them, feel them, the brutal, unforgiving metal, and my mind in its agony went back to his childhood, to a small splinter in his finger, easily removed with a needle and a kiss, and then forward to the nails, so vast, so final. The contrast, Father, was a torment beyond endurance.
Words. The simplicity of a child's pain, easily soothed. The enormity of a God's pain, inflicted by men and unstoppable by his mother. I had always known, since the angel, since Simeon, since the first time he stumbled on a stone and I saw the shadow of a cross. The knowledge was a relentless, silent companion, a ghost at every meal, a whisper in every dream, and I lived it every day, every moment. The agony was not just at the end, it was the entire journey.
The eternal torment was knowing the end from the beginning, and still having to live each moment as the mother who only wanted her son to come home safely, to escape the inevitable, to defy destiny, even if it meant defying God Himself. And that, Father, was my sin, my quiet, ceaseless war, the screaming of a mother's heart drowned out by the chorus of acceptance, by the demands of a divine plan.
For all eternity, it means that the highest form of sacrifice is not merely giving, but suppressing the very essence of who you are, over and over, for a destiny you cannot change. The question is not what He felt on the cross, Father. The question is what we are willing to silence within ourselves when the grand design demands a pain that defies our very nature. The question is, how much of yourself do you truly surrender before you cease to be and simply become a thread in a tapestry woven by hands not your own?